Ash is
has
trash, in
shifted
my
the power
opinion.
of our disruption.
And
into this
they realize that Ash is kind of garbage because gross Appaloosa. Based. So freaking based, bro. Is that a dragon maid? So we're here to react to our boy Bread Boy Weeb. Just came across his video. I know a lot of people have reacted to it, and I just want to give my 2 cents on this because this is pretty much the only thing my channel talks about at this point because of the disappointment in today's game.
What is the point of building new archetypes when the best way to play them is to vomit out the same 4 to 5 boss monsters and call it a day?
Spot on 100%. That's kind of what I've been saying for a lot of, like, a good minute. What is the point of playing any deck? This is literally why I made base cringe, because every cringe deck, they're cringe because they make Barone, Apo, Savage. Like, it's always the same end board. So it's like, what is the point? What is the point of even playing that deck? So Barone is pretty generic. There's no really Barone deck. I guess there was possibly something in the show. In the current game, there's no like Barone deck. So I get it if that's teched into whatever, but like if you want to play Savage, just run Dragon Link. If you want to play Apple, I guess Apple, these generic no archetype having boss monsters that are just released because they're too lazy to support old archetypes. They just want to, here's this generic thing that most decks can make, and therefore every deck basically got a power up. Well, it's not really the case, because those decks that needed a power up in the first place, they now cannot play through a meta deck's Apo. A meta deck making an Apo and you making an Apo in your Spiral deck, it's not the same.
If you look at the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the last 5-ish years, I feel like we are just playing the same old song and dance until the generic pieces we use are either banned or powered.
And yeah, and not even just that, the same old song and dance. It's literally just spam, 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 spam. I believe in like Arc 5 or whatever, like they literally made a joke about this because someone was running, I think, X Sabers, or am I tripping? I think at the beginning of the show, someone's running X Sabers and like he summons like 5 times in a turn, and like they're like, what is this dude doing, bro? Was the other guy gonna get a turn? Like just like crazy stuff like that. So literally Konami knows the joke. It's gotten to the point where it's meta now, but now at this point no one just cares. It's almost like Konami was replaced by entirely new employees, where old Konami and new Konami are like wholeheartedly different. I don't know if like you guys have noticed this, but back in the day, legacy support would be trash and there would be only like 3-4 decks in the format, like most formats. Now we actually do get somewhat decent formats and really good legacy support, but we also get this absolute lack of xenophobia, genericness all over the place, where any deck can run anything and your imagination's your only limitation. I don't know if you guys noticed that. If you have noticed that also, please comment down below, let me know, because like this is kind of interesting. Like, you guys remember when legacy support was crap? Like a Dark Magician card would be announced and be like, what is this? Like, now we get legacy support and it's like, here's this, every legacy support seems to be a banger. Like even the Raid Raptor, which isn't even like that competitively viable, it's still like topping tournaments.
Or crept. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no stranger to powerful generic cards influencing the game. Hell, GOAT players will convince you a format based on who can draw and recycle Pot of Greed first is a true expression of skill. But even back then, your generic cards were
GOAT format shots, huh?
not your deck's main game plan. They were just the tools that got you there. I mean, you could play a deck of all Mirror Forces, but I run a 0 UR deck challenge, and even I wouldn't play this trash. Magic Cylinder Turbo is absolutely something
Yeah, Magic Cylinder is the GOAT.
coming though, so be ready for that. Now, how did this shift happen from Toolbox to main focus? Well, let's take a look. The first sign of a shift was in the Synchro era. Regardless of the deck you played, most players made room for generic staple boss monsters like Goyo Guardian, Stardust Dragon, and Black Rose Dragon.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, those cards were really powerful, and if your deck facilitated tuners, non-tuners, and levels that added up to 6, 7, or 8, it's kind of crazy that Goyo is a 6 and 2800 attack. That seems like a little over, like almost like too good. Probably that's why he was errata, even though the errata was not necessary. Like, if you could facilitate these brand new cards, like they just, sped up the game, gave you a boss monster without having to wait to like tribute summon or, set up your graveyard like Dark Armed or whatever. Like, these cards were just that next level of gameplay. It's kind of like they were probably what links are today, back in the day, where the decks that could facilitate link summoning very easily are very powerful now. Very powerful now. Back in the day, the decks that could facilitate synchro summoning were probably very powerful, or were very powerful. Like, I remember Stardust Dragon was summoned pretty much at the end of every end board.
The last one specifically was literally in every deck of this era. It had a 100% play rate.
Black Rose
However, this
crazy.
era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is beloved by all besides the most staunch Yu-Gi boomers, and we just saw what kind of Yu-Gi-Oh! Appealed to them. But why is this? Because the generic monsters used were more of a toolbox. This word is thrown around a bit.
Yeah, those like Toolbox Yu-Gi-Oh! Is probably the best because inherently you can never make a game that has new stuff come out all the time, where like you have stuff that shuts down entire mechanics in stun. You have control, where like it plays wholeheartedly different than combo or mid-range. You need to have different types of accessibility, cards accessible in certain different moments of games where you can actually be able to play. That's what Toolbox really enabled. A lot of these different decks would make boss monsters, like if you had a Stardust on your opponent's field, you can't really threaten with destruction. And so, what was the next stage of power creeping that, right? It protected from Mirror Force, Sakuretsu, all that different stuff. Well, what was the next iteration of that? Well, when you get to the XC era, you have Toolbox like Castel, where it's like, here, I'll summon this guy, basically lose 2 monsters to just have a vanilla, but I get to out a Stardust, out a whatever else is the threat. Like, as long as it can be targetable, it can be, gotten rid of. So I really, really enjoy Toolbox Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it's supposed to be there in case you cannot play, in case like the opponent has basically just shut you out. Where now it's like the boss monster in the extra deck has like 6 negates and he is my ultimate end goal. There's nothing else I want to do. Your little weenies in the main deck are just like combo pieces. There's nothing really that the main deck really does anymore, except like with a few exceptions, like Eldritch or whatnot, where the boss monster's mainly in the main deck and stuff like that.
In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sphere, and here is where I'm going to define it in my opinion. Just like how you own a box of tools to deal with specific problems, your extra deck had monsters that could out specific boards and remove whatever your opponent had. This created a solid back and forth, with cards like Black Rose Dragon being amazing turn 2 board.
Which, to be fair, Black Rose is super unfair if you like look at like the scale of like power in that like format. Like, that's why you said it was like 100% play rate. You just drop a nuke, bro, and it can basically end the game in that moment. So is Black Rose like a perfectly healthy card in its own right? Like, if you really are honest, no, it isn't, because it just like, it doesn't reset the game. It puts your opponent, if they committed enough, where I guess it depends on the ethos of and the mindset of players in that time, where like if the player commits a lot of stuff to the board and they get Black Rose, they just auto lose. That's fine because you played into that, right? It's like a trap that you played into. Black Rose is in the format. You should be able to, play around it. Don't set all your traps. Set one trap. Summon a monster in a trap. Pass, right? I know people are like, well, that sounds awful. Yeah, but that's how Yu-Gi-Oh! Was played back in the day.
Board clearers and being countered.
The vomit my whole hand wasn't a thing until literally like 2018. 2017. Basically, once pendulums came, that's when people started innovating on vomit entire hand to the board. Because before, without massive negates, you couldn't really commit to that type of playstyle. It was actually viewed as bad and stupid. Like, the only bad players would do that. And now, the best players figure out combos to vomit your entire hand, while the bad players are like, I'll keep some resources in reserve. It's like, that turn's never coming, dog.
By your opponent making Stardust Dragon. However, you could run over Stardust Dragon going second with cards like Goyo Guardian, but if your opponent has a battle trap, it stops that. Not to mention, making a level 8 turn 1 wasn't always immediately feasible, so what were you able to end on took a bit more understanding. Now, eventually, in the Synchro era, we did get turn 1 negates, but it was stuff like Quasar, which in deck to commit into, and even then it was a single Omni negate. So to make the equivalent of Barone back then, you needed 2 Synchro monsters and 1 Tuner Synchro monster. Hell, Barone's target pop effect probably makes it better than Quasar.
100%. I've been saying this for a moment. Like, Apo, Barone, Savage are the worst cards in the modern game. Like, I would say Savage the least out of those, because it does require, like, it has a little bit of a, like, you can interrupt it, I guess, since it has to target a guy in the grave and whatnot. But Barone, pop and a negate, it's a, like, 1 card remove 2 things from the field. It's a great going second card. It's a great going first card. It's absolutely perfect. So there's the design philosophies. You have to either make more cards like Barone, or you have to hit cards like that, because obviously we have so much pack filler, so many bad cards that come out, that Barone is like a that DPE Dragoon, cards like that. Like, I mean, if cards were all that power level, I mean, the game would be a little bit crazy, but you could then deal with this type of stuff because every one of your cards would be crazy, where that's not the case. A lot of your cards are bad. So Barone just negating one of your cards, like your key card that helps break their board, and then like having like an Apo as backup is just usually game winning.
Just comparing effects, because its OTK power really isn't helpful these days. But what is helpful is if you like this video and subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 3K and I can't wait to hit it. But for the Xyz era, it was much the same. We didn't really have insane going first boards with the exception of the worst card ever printed. I know this vid is very critical of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, but I'd rather they unban any of these link bastards before we
Whoa, big dog. Hey, let's not do the false dichotomy of either or, like either bring back this or that. Like, let's just as the Lord intended, let's just limit or ban all link monsters in the game, even the bad ones.
Unlock the shock. The best thing you could really make going first was something like Giant Hand, which was a 2K prize card, and Minerva, which was also a 2K prize card. I didn't say the format was affordable, I just said it was different. What the Xyz era really increased...
Yeah, but I feel like that was like a little bit later, right? Like, Xyz era was like Dante, and before that was like Hat decks and stuff like that.
Was the power of Toolbox monsters. Number 101, Castel, Exciton Knight,
and Excite. See, it's like every generation has their cool card that helps in certain situation, cool card that helps in certain situations, retarded OP card that just blows your opponent out.
And if you really wanted to hit over like something Zeus hard, man, nobody did it better than you.
You got Synchro Zeus, Bug Zeus, and then now we have Zeus
via the lightning. While for the most part, Yu-Gi-Oh has always been a game where going first is typically better, these incredibly toolboxy eras were probably the closest we've ever gotten to a true fair side of the game. We're going second.
Who is making two big guys going first? That is ridiculous.
Isn't the end of the world. Obviously in this era, things like Dragon
Kashtira players be like,
and Ruler still existed, but even then the mirror is still quite skill dependent and isn't super dependent on what goes first or second. Penned format was when you could really spiral into an insane amount of power going first, and spiral format was when we had gone...
I love spirals, but also, oof, link trash.
Too far. I think it would be a criminal underestimation to say Master Rule 4 and onwards,
what were they thinking when they made Quick Fix, dude? This is crazy.
We had never seen before. I have an entire video I want to make on link summoning as a whole, so make sure you sub for that. But for now, what I want to highlight is a change in our...
This is without master plan, bro.
Our generic going second cards. We started with main deck cards to deal with opponent stuff, then progressing...
Like, this is a great point. Mirror Force, right? Like, the fact that Mirror Force is bad is crazy. Like that's insane, dude. A card that says destroy all your opponents. It's like the perfect trap card. It is literally the most fair blowout. You can play around it. If you play into it, you die. It's so much skill expression in this one card, and the fact that it's bad is just a travesty. Because every deck just goes, oh, here's my this guy, and he just pops that before I even attack, and it's like, oh.
Mostly in the extra deck, and now we
like, guys, please, can you guys can we comment down below, like, what would it take to make a modern day Mirror Force? I know some people say evenly matched is a modern day Mirror Force. I don't agree, right? Because it's just drop it. Like, what would it take to be able to set a trap, a battle trap, and then what would it have? What kind of effect would it have to have? Would it have to have like a float effect? What do you think would be the bare minimum for a card to be at least ran at maybe a couple, post side? Comment down below, baby.
We have moved back into our disruption coming from the main deck. This was the era that really popularized hand traps,
pretty cool.
Which, yes,
like, I'm not a fan of hand traps, but Imprim's actually really sweet.
Things like Ash Blossom,
such
Ghost Ogre, and Nibiru
Ash is trash,
have shifted the power of our disruption.
And they realize that Ash is kind of garbage because it negates the effect, not the activation, which is so devastating when you're going second, where like your opponent has already made a board and they have Ash in the hand, where it can negate a card, and then when it negates that card, you just if it's like an activate effect, like let's say you have like a spell searcher card, right? And you activate it, and you've kind of planned out for your opponent's board. You're like, okay, my opponent's board is this. They have 3 negates. I'll activate this. If they negate it, I have a second one in hand to be able to search. You activate it, they ash it, right? That basically absolutely blows you out, because now they still have those 3-4 negates on the field. They've negated the effect of your card, and you can't activate the second copy in your hand, where you just lose. Because what do you have left? You started out with 6, you lost 1, you have 5. Another one of those is basically functionally dead in your hand, because it's an activate effect, and ash only negates the effect, not the activation, like Bell. And so now you have 4 cards left for their board of 4 negates. Good luck, G.
Incredibly focused single-use monsters. That's because we now pretty much commit most of our extra deck into building the most insane board your deck can muster.
Yep.
Extenders on extenders,
And a lot of times we go through like
from the main
15
deck, and the
freaking
final
monsters
pieces
in one
that put up
combo.
enough negates to
Gross Appaloosa.
stop anything and everything your opponent can throw at you. And the greatest offender of this
Look at this
philosophy is Appaloosa,
I hate
Bow
this
of the
card.
Goddess.
Ugh.
I despise this card.
Let's
With
go.
Every fiber
Let's go, bro. True gangster opinion right here. True gangster opinion. A man of culture. If you like Appo, you probably don't have friends.
of my being, and I have zero idea how it's been allowed to be legal all this time.
Agreed.
Realistically, think about the last 10 duels where you or your opponent summon this card. It pretty much ends the game immediately.
Yeah.
Because there's
Like the moment you don't even get to your opponent's turn, because they'll just laugh. Like they'll just do that, call it the Appaloosa smirk, where they're like, huh. And like they look at their hand, and then they draw their 6th card, and then they go, we'll just go next game, right? Like every single time. Because once again, Appo is not back. Appo is not alone. They go, you can Forbidden Chalice it. You can Impermit. No, you can't. Minimum Appo's, because Appo is easy to summon, bro. It's not that it's 4 monster materials or whatever, 3-4 monster materials. It's not a big deal to make. Every deck and their mother now can spam and spam and spam. Just making 4 free monsters is easy. Look at Fire King Snake Eye. Look at crappy decks like Dark World.
2 options. Your opponent is going to have a specific board breaker and win immediately because you committed half of your deck's resources to Appaloosa, or
Yeah.
your opponent is going to lose immediately because with Engine and like 1 negate, they can't play through
Yeah,
3 to 4
Engine just
monster
doesn't
negates
work
and
anymore.
anything
It's
else
not-
you might
it's
have.
not
Because
feasible.
every meta combo deck doesn't just end on Appo, it ends on Barone, Borreload Savage Dragon, or all 3 of them.
Yep.
This style of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is something that I thought for the last few years we had tried to distance ourselves from after the Link era of 40-minute
Apparently not.
combo nonsense. And I see when Konami tries to make mid-range formats focused around specifically unique boss
Based. So freaking based, bro. Mirror Jade, Aluber. If you like Branded, bro, this dude deserves my subscription.
monsters come to life, and it's interesting. And while you and I might not like the specific boss monster
Like low key, if you look at a Rice Heart compared to the Snake Eye board, it's functionally like it asks you the same thing, but a Rice Heart, why it's more fair, hear me out, is because, not that I'm advocating for it to be unbanned, I hate this current format. A Rice Heart asks you, do you have 1 out? Can you draw a Book of Moon? Can you draw Forbidden, well, I guess not Forbidden Droplets, but Book of Moon, Book of Eclipse, Forbidden Chalice, I guess. Any of those cards, right? A Kaiju, right? Can you draw that 1 card? If you can, cool. And I'm not saying like the first format iteration where it was like Shangri-Era, this thing, and banish your whole entire deck with Diabolosos. I'm talking about post-Diabolosos ban. The card just functionally asks you, like, do you have 1 out, right? And if you run, I don't know, 10 to 15 of them, you're going to draw it. And some engines can actually play through this because the banish doesn't absolutely slaughter them. While the Snake Eyes engine functionally asks you, if you're going second, do you have 3 hand traps? If not, you lose.
that shape that individual format,
I'd
I
rather
think
have
we
to
can
draw
all
1 card
appreciate
than
not
3.
having to stare down the same handful of boss monsters every time we go to locals.
Yup.
Because what these cards do for the most part is ruin the amazing ideas and mechanics of so many decks. For example, in Adamancipator, you literally excavate the earth to find rocks to build your board with.
Yeah, it was just kind of, it's a really sweet thought, design thought, but is that a Dragon Maid? Disgusting. I gotta throw up. I'm sorry. I gotta throw up. Oh my god. Hold up. Oh Lord. Oof. Please, no more dragon mates, please. Yeah, where was I? Adamantipator is functionally like just wombo combo spam. It was designed to just extend. Like one dude gets another dude, another gets another dude. They synchron to this guy gets another dude. It's very similar to Snake Eyes, unfortunately, and that's why Adamantipator was the last deck, not last deck, one of the most egregious like problems in recent Yu-Gi-Oh, where it was summon Appo, summon Savage, summon whatever, summon basically like big FTK board.
With. In Monadium, you crush your balls and weave through an interconnected story of different worlds and people to make your boss monsters as well. And with
wait, bruh, who are these? Is that like a Rise Heart? Or am I tripping? Torrid? Is that like a Rise Heart? What is this water one? Dude. Guys, that's not a Rice Heart, is it? No, it's not. It's not. I think I'm just like Konami's just running out of cool designs.
And people to make your boss monsters as well. And with Spiral, you literally spy on your opponent's cards to gain intel and set up your espionage. But with all of these unique and amazing ideas, it's such a shame that the best way to play them for the most part is to spam out the generic.
So yeah, IP2, huge problem. Guys, if any of you whoever's still watching, like if you guys want to enjoy a more fun format, me and my play group, our testing group, are building a format on the Discord, link down below, where we have banned, well, we didn't ban DP because it's not a problem, but Barone, IP, Appo, all these different cards, so we can actually test the game without having to rely on like garbage, like where we actually see how good archetypes are, as opposed to just being like enablers for OP boss monsters. If you guys want to check that out, we're making a tournament, all that stuff down below in the description. Go follow it, go to the link, and we'll get a tournament going by the end of April. Let's go, baby.
Boss monsters mentioned before as fast as possible. It feels like such a waste to design all these cool concepts when you are mostly ignoring them because they aren't as good as saying no to your opponent 5 times. Now maybe Yu-Gi-Oh could be so much better if we banned all of these, but there is one caveat I want to mention. Barone is a strange one. In some decks like Sword Soul, it plays the supplementary piece of negation. You still win the game with the Sword Soul starters and boss monsters 99% of the time, it's just there to help. I think these cards are at their best when
yeah, it is. I think the reason that we have such a nice opinion on the Barone and Sword Soul is because Sword Soul has been so power crept. But I think if Sword Soul was making Protos with Barone and whatnot, it wouldn't be the same tune. I get it. I'm a fan of Sword Soul. I'm not a hater. It's one of those decks that I actually genuinely enjoy because it actually does its own thing. It doesn't just spam whatever. Perhaps because we don't use links to the same capacity in Sword Soul as we do in other decks, that's probably why we don't mind Barone over there. Barone seems to really only get disgusting when it's paired up with disgusting links, Appo, and IPSP and Savage.
Made something like that, because this is not a hate video on generic cards as a concept, because I think it's an amazing way to work.
I think I've heard this before, where like generic cards should be ideally a certain power level, right? So if an archetypal card, let's say we're talking about Branded, the best deck, we've got Mirror Jade, right? Let's say Mirror Jade's power level is a 10 out of 10, right? Well, a generic Mirror Jade or a generic like Appo type card, it should only have the like power level of like 80%, 70% of a Mirror Jade. It should never get that, but like unfortunately that's not the case, right? Generic monsters have the 100% power level, and then like Mirror Jade feels like a 70% of generic boss monsters, because Mirror Jade feels functionally worse than, your Barone. It feels worse than Appo. Appo for sure. I feel like power creeps just literally everything. And when people say like, oh, there's outs like spells and traps, dude, there isn't. People don't make just Appo, right? And there was, when Appo was released, for a time, it was just make Appo and you still win. You're putting them on gotta have like some spell trap negate, and if they didn't, they just lose. Like Appo was a Rice Heart in a way.
And I think the best way to make a generic boss monster is Zeus. Zeus is one of the best designed cards in the last few years. And insanely...
Yeah, only because going first is so broken that Zeus looks tame by comparison and looks like good card design. But in a vacuum, Zeus is awfully designed, right? Like you just attack, put it over any XYZ that you have, try to stack materials, and then it's multiple times a chain where like it's in that instance it's worse than Apo, right? But because it's only focused on going second, Zeus is fine-ish. But if we were to hit some of these going first cards, I mean, Zeus would have to be on the chopping block too, because he is just that broken, right? Boards would be too easily broken with him.
Powerful removal tool that gives all Xyz decks some potential to break a board going second without having to draw a specific out.
Right.
This is the peak of generic support, and I hope in the future this is what Yu-Gi-Oh pivots to, and less about this.
I think Typhon is better, better in my opinion, design, because you can't do anything afterwards. You can't. He's not a quick effect. He just says like, hey, big boss, you can't use your effect while I'm on the field, which is, it's a floodgate effect, but it's a fair floodgate effect because he stops you too. He's a cool way to stop Nib, which I really like. And he's also a non-targeting bounce, which means he's just an out to like any degenerate like boss monster. Like, I think Typhon is a lot better of an example than Zeus, but I do get the sentiment. I'm not horribly against Zeus. I just think because the game is the way it is, that's why Zeus is fine.
Yes. I mentioned before how the extra deck is mostly just combo extenders and boss monsters, but for the last 5%, this is a perfect example of great and awful design in Yu-Gi-Oh! A card like Underworld Goddess, in my opinion, is fantastic design. Absurd
Agreed.
removal at an insane cost for you, and any amount of disruption your opponent has can prevent her from being...
Yeah, she's honestly perfection. And the fact like they even gave her an effect just makes her so good. Link 5, you know, you can... like you're effectively trading like 4 of your monsters, unless you're the monster you're trying to out from your opponent's side is a Link 2. You're trading 4 of your monsters for your opponent's boss monster, which for decks that spam, that's a way better use of the spam than to make Apo.
Summon to the board. And then there's Accesscode, a card that effectively removed the concept of major weaknesses for meta decks.
Yep.
Accesscode and Boral Sword, for a smaller degree, was when...
Once Boral Sword was released, which is another reference to, so like to reference our Discord again, the ban list that we use, that format, we've literally banned Apo, Accesscode, Boral Sword, because once Boral Sword was released, and Accesscode then by extension, it's been just like, there has been no, you know, I can play a little and then let them go, and then it'll get back to me with more resources to be able to break their board. No, it's like you break their whole board. If you don't kill them, they'll kill you. Like there is no, or if you're setting up, you can't just set up some. You have to vomit your hand because crap like this exists. And it's 2 effect monsters, which is just like crazy. Like Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax is a million times worse card than this card. And it's 2 monsters special summon from the extra deck. Like, this card should have had more limitations. Boral Sword should have had more limitations. They functionally, Boral Sword just power creep Boral Load, which was crazy. Like, Boral Load was an awesome card when they made it. Outs, crazy stuff, steals your opponent's boss monsters, non-targeting. It was like the modern day Goyo Guardian, and then they just go, yeah, what if we gave every deck like Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon? Or not Chimera Tech Fortress, Chimera Tech Over Dragon, or the one that attacks multiple times, like Cyber Twin Dragon. That's what they basically did with Boral Sword in this thing. Here, we're just giving everybody, just smash your opponent into the face until they die. Because what's a turn 3, 4, 5? That's stupid. Why would we do that?
Konami basically gave up on the idea that some decks might have a better ability to OTK than others. Recoverability is a cool...
like functionally Cyber Dragon and crap like that. It's just like, yeah, you're an OTK deck who isn't everything. Like I run Accesscode too. Why do you call your deck an OTK deck?
Skill for a deck to
Cyber Dragon had to turn into like a negate trap deck at times.
Have, especially mid-range and control builds, but it's difficult to implement in the modern game because you won't have a chance to recover if you die turn 2 to these assholes.
Oh my god,
in a strange way,
maids,
they simplify aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the worst way.
My brother,
Brother, what's that? What's that, brother?
Possible, and are sort of the second half to why Yu-Gi-Oh! Has the stereotype that all the games end in 2 turns. You either end on a ton of negates or slam them through and OTK your opponent. Now to be clear, this is not indicative of every format and every style. I think we can
It's not, but it's just such a prevalent problem that always pops up. Like, if Yu-Gi-Oh isn't dealing with this kind of crap, it's dealing with some tier 0 that's probably abusing these kind of cards. It's just, it's such a frustrating game at times.
I'll agree on that. But these decks reinforce that notion.
Like when people, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but when people have to constantly leave the game for formats, that's a problem.
Until this very day. And I think the best way moving forward is to give decks back their identity and to bring back more of a back and forth. So please, we should ban Appaloosa. This will not only fix all the general problems.
I think if their next ban list was just ban Appaloosa, I think we'd be like
the tier 0 deck that came out a few months ago. So we know Konami's not going to hit it hard anytime soon. I know this would affect a ton of other decks besides Snake Eyes, but if your deck is nothing without Appaloosa, you shouldn't have it. Thank you all for watching.
Hey. Appreciate it. This is a great video. I hope to see more of these type of videos from the community. Real big shout out to what's the name again? Big shout out to Bread Boy Weeb. Guys, please follow him if you don't already. I'm smaller than him, so I'm assuming some of you guys have already like possibly learned about him. But if you haven't, please follow him. I'll link him down below in the description. Just overall phenomenal video. Got nothing to say other than that. If you guys want to try a format that kind of gets rid of all of these problems, a ban list that gets rid of all these problems, I've literally made an Edo Pro file, an Edo Pro ban list that you can download in our Discord, put it into your Edo Pro, and not have to play with these cards. I hope to see you guys over there in the Discord. Join. Thank you guys for watching this video, for me ranting on this dude's great takes. Much love to all you guys, and as always, I'll see ya.